Good evening. It's Thursday with Tim, and we are going to look at the fruit of the Spirit, joy. Do you have joy in your life? Sad to say that very many of us do not have joy in our lives. Very many of us go through life feeling empty and have no joy, no delight. Well, joy is the emotion of great delight or happiness caused by something exceptionally good or satisfying. So let's look at joy. With phileo love or brotherly love, joy is tenuous at best. With agape love, joy is rock solid. So I want to look at three things. I want to look at where did our joy go? What gives us joy, or what do we think gives us joy? And what should really give us joy? So, where did our joy go? We hear a lot about education. And I'm only going to bring up like about three things each, and you could bring up more than that if you wanted to, about where our joy has went. But one of the things I believe where our joy has went is in our education, and not that there's anything wrong with education. I don't want anyone to say Tim is against education, because Tim is not against education. Education is a very good thing. A lot of times it's needed. You can't go wrong with being educated as long as you are educated, and as long as you understand that education isn't the end of all things. Too many of us, though, with education, has grown beyond God. Hosea chapter 4, verse 6, God says, "My people are ruined because they lack knowledge of me." They grew past God. We see that in our society today, that we have grown past God. We don't need God in our lives anymore, we think. We think that we are educated and that we know more than what God does. Or we say that there is no God. We rely on our education to tell us where we came from, who put us here. You know what some people think? Some people think, and some of these people are educated people, think that we came from space aliens, from outer space. We think that our ancestors couldn't possibly be capable of building the pyramids without space aliens. And really, whenever we say that, we're really selling ourselves short. No pun intended for those who know that I'm a short person. But we're really saying to our ancestors that you know nothing. You know why we say that? It's because we don't think that they had the capability of building the pyramids to make it last and to fit the huge, enormous blocks so tight together that you can't even squeeze a piece of paper through them. That's how tight the blocks are. We lack the knowledge of how they did it, so we think that they couldn't be able to do it. And because we're educated, we think that space aliens had to do that, had to give them the technology. Sometimes we rely on our education to be the end all of all. We expect our education to carry us through. We don't need to be dependent upon anyone else. I'm educated. I know what I'm talking about. I know I have something to fall back on, which is true. Education is something that no one can take away from you. But don't become so educated into thinking that you can't learn anything or that you don't need anybody. Because you know what? We all need somebody. Education is not a means of the end of all things. That you can't progress beyond education, or that you don't need nobody, because you do. We need everybody. We hate to admit it at times, but we really do. And sometimes we rely on education and our joy just goes out the window. Follow the science. Trust in science. Science can explain everything. Science says that we evolved, even though that every time they say that and they look for it, they've never been able to find something that we evolved from. The missing link. Never found the missing link. And they never will find the missing link. Again, science, there's people out there says that we came from space aliens, that they brought us to this planet and they put us here and we've progressed on our own. Or evolution, we evolved. It took millions and millions and millions of years to get to where we're at, where in reality we was created with a free will and intelligence. We may not always act intelligent, but we have intelligence, and we was created with intelligence. Our God created us. You want to know where you came from? Read the scriptures. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and it followed it day by day, and he gets to day 6, and he says, let us make man in our image. Let him rule over the sky, the birds of the sky, and fish of the sea, and over the beasts of the earth, and every creeping thing on the earth. And so they made both male and female in his image. That's where it came from. We have a piece of God within us, our soul. We need to know that. We ought to rejoice with that. But too many times they want us to follow the science. And sometimes the science that they are telling us to follow just doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. For instance, one of the things that they want you and I to follow the science on is you and I to believe that there is gender fluidity. And not just that, but there is multiple genders. Gender without end, if you will. They forget that to follow the science that they want us to follow doesn't make sense. But if you want to follow true science, biology says that there is only 2 genders, male, female. It doesn't matter. 2, only 2. Even in the earthworm that has both genders within them has male and female. Even some amphibian frogs, amphibian animals, frogs that is around around themselves, and there's not enough gender of one to procreate. Meaning there may be a deficit of male or there may be a deficit of female. There will be some that will change their gender to become what they need to continue on with their procreation, to continue on their to fulfill their life. But there's only male or female. But they don't want to follow that science. Neither do some want to follow the science that it is not my body. How many times have you heard that? I have the right to end that life. It's my body. But yet, whenever you become pregnant, females, women, young ladies, it is not only your body then. You also have someone else inside of you, someone else that, yes, is dependent upon you, but is an entirely separate being within you. Whoever you had sex with, relations with, they and you are a part of each other, and you are creating or you are helping to produce a person that is separate but is both of you. And so follow the science can lead us to be in emptiness. Trust in riches. Matthew chapter 19, 16 through 22, the rich young ruler comes to Jesus. Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus tells him the commandments. And he says, from these things I have followed from my youth up. And Jesus, having compassion on him, says, you lack one thing. Go and sell all that you have and give to the poor and come follow me. And the young man went away sad because he had great wealth. Wealth, it does not always mean happiness, and yet we think it does. So what gives us joy? What do we think gives us joy? Many people turn to alcohol and illicit drugs. These things only makes us addicted to them. Alcohol makes us addicted to it. We become its slave, always wanting to satisfy that addiction. Same way with illegal drugs or even prescribed drugs. You become addicted to those if you want to. Painkillers. Too many people have become addicted to prescribed painkillers, and they have to keep taking more and more and more to try to get back to that feeling that they had when they first started taking it. Same way with alcohol. You may start off drinking beer, but you soon wind up drinking the hard liquor to try to get you to feel that euphoria that you once had. Tobacco use. I used to smoke. I used to think that I was someone from imitating a character from Hollywood, maybe someone prestigious, maybe a certain character, maybe. Thought I was somebody. Thought I was cool, if you will, but really all I was addicted. And addiction separates you from your loved ones, from your family. I would have told you no, it didn't, but you know what? It really does. I can look back and I can see myself separated from enjoying my family and friends, my Christian friends. Sexual immorality. People go to the clubs and to bars to try to find someone to be with, to try to make themselves secure, to try to give themselves joy, but it ends up, all it does is making them feel used and shameful. It's a sad state that we live in nowadays in our society, isn't it? Well, what should give us joy? What can give us joy? Well, the psalmist in 119 verse 11 says, God's testimony can give us joy. There is joy in obeying God and doing things His way. For one, we don't have to worry about having a guilty conscience of what we did when we was drunk or high or something like that. We know that what we done, and if we do God's will, if we obey God's will and have self-control, we know what we have done and we have a clear conscience, and that makes us able to have peace and joy. What a wonderful thing to have, isn't it? Well, being of the same mind also should bring us joy. Philippians 2:2. Make my joy complete in being of same mind. Being part of God's church, we need to agree on certain things. How to obtain His salvation, how we are to worship Him, and how we are to live for Him. We need to be of the same mind. If we're too busy fighting each other, disagreeing with each other, can we be of the same mind? No. But if we agree on how to obtain His salvation, if we agree on how we ought to worship Him, and if we agree on how we are to live for Him and why we're here on this earth, and that is to preach the gospel to man, to reconcile our brothers and sisters of our neighbors to God. Reconciliation, as Paul talks about in Romans chapter 5, 19 through 20, 21. And finally, trust God with our salvation. You know, I don't have the right to judge you on what you do, and you don't have the right to judge me on what I do. That is up to God. And if we live our lives in clear conscience, and if we are actually doing what God says that we need to do in the scriptures, who can judge us? But God Himself judges us. He says that we are able to stand because God makes us stand. But again, we need to make sure that we are living the life according to the scriptures to walk in a manner worthy, pleasing to Him. What brings you joy? Do you have joy? I hope that you do. God wants you to have joy. That's why He gave you His Spirit, and that's part of His Spirit, the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace. Next week, we'll look at kindness and hopefully together goodness. I don't know if you can separate those two. The scriptures do. I don't know if I can really separate the two. I may have to, but I will try to deliver them together because they're so much alike. Kindness and goodness. That's what we'll be looking at next week. God bless.